My name is Elias Reyes, and I was standing in Conference Hall 3 of Meridian Station when a stranger from another star declared war on my entire species. I remember the moment clearly, because I was the one holding the translation tablet, and my hands did not shake even though my mind was screaming. Let me back up a little. I worked as a junior translator for the Human Outreach Bureau, the small group of people whose job was to sit in rooms like this one and make sure nobody misunderstood anybody else. It was not a glamorous job. Most days I translated trade agreements about mineral rights or fishing zones on some moon nobody had heard of. I liked it that way. Quiet, boring, safe. That day was different. The delegation across the table belonged to the Vashtar Compact, a group of star systems that had been part of galactic society for over 4,000 years. They were tall, pale blue, with long faces, and even longer memories. They did not think much of humanity. Why would they? We had only been part of the wider galaxy for 60 years. To them, we were children who had just learned to walk. Their lead negotiator was a woman named Sen Calvor. She had a voice like cold water, and eyes that never seemed to blink. She was here about a mining dispute in a system called Kessler's Reach, 3 uninhabited planets that both our peoples wanted for their metal deposits. Your colony ships arrived 11 days before your treaty registration, Sen said through my tablet, her words turning into English, a half-second after she spoke them. By compact law, the claim is void. The system belongs to us. Ambassador Chen, sitting beside me, kept her voice calm. Our surveyors arrived within the legal window recognized by the Unified Charter, which both our governments signed. We are happy to discuss shared access. There is nothing to discuss. Sen's tone did not change at all. You are new to this galaxy. You do not yet understand how things work here. Return the system, or there will be consequences. I typed the translation, word for word, and felt something cold settle in my stomach. I had read the historical files on the Vashtar. They were proud, they were old, and in 4,000 years, nobody had ever told them no and lived to feel good about it. Ambassador Chen did not blink either. We will not be returning the system, but we remain open to negotiation. Sen Calvor stood up. The room went very quiet. Beside her, 2 of her aides exchanged a look that I could not quite read. Nervousness, maybe, or something closer to boredom, like this was a formality they had performed 100 times before with 100 other minor species. Then by the authority granted to me by the Vashtar Compact, she said, I declare a state of war between our peoples, effective immediately upon this broadcast. She touched a device on her wrist. A small light blinked red. And just like that, it was done. Not with fire, not with weapons. Just a woman standing in a conference room, pressing a button, and changing everything. I translated her words for the record, because that was my job, even in that moment. My voice did not crack. But inside, I was thinking about my grandmother, who used to tell me stories about the old wars back on Earth. Wars that killed millions of people before humanity finally learned, the hard way, how not to destroy itself. I was thinking about how those lessons never really left us. They just went quiet, waiting. Sensor logs later showed that within 4 minutes of that broadcast, 17 different alien monitoring stations near human space picked up the declaration. Within an hour, 3 of those stations had moved their listening posts further away from our border. Within a day, 2 neutral trade fleets rerouted around human territory entirely, giving us a wide, careful berth. I did not understand why at first. Neither did the Vashtar, I think. They believed they had just threatened a young, harmless species that would either surrender or be quietly erased. What they did not know, what almost nobody outside a handful of older galactic powers knew, was that humanity's file in the galactic registry was badly out of date. 60 years ago, when we first made contact, our own diplomats had made a strange and deliberate choice. We did not show the galaxy our full history. We showed them our art, our science, our cooperation, our hope. We did not lead with our wars. We did not lead with the fact that human beings had spent most of our history fighting each other, learning terrible lessons about survival, and coming out the other side, more stubborn than any species had a right to be. It was not a lie, exactly. It was just an incomplete picture, offered on purpose. A few of the older species, the ones who had actually studied Earth's full history in secret, understood what we were. They kept their observations quiet, and their fleets far from our borders. They had seen what happened when other species pushed too hard against something they did not understand. The Vashtar had not read those files, or if they had not believed them. After Sen Calvor left the station, I sat alone in the translation booth for a long time. Ambassador Chen came to find me. "You did well in there," she said. "They just declared war on us," I said. "Over 3 empty planets." She sat down across from me, folding her hands. "Elias, I need you to understand something. This is not the disaster it looks like. They have 4,000 years on us, fleets we haven't even mapped, weapons we don't fully understand." "They have all of that," Chen agreed. "And in about a week, they are going to wish they had asked more questions first." I did not understand what she meant. Not yet. Over the following days, I watched the response unfold from my small apartment on the station. Mostly through official briefings I was cleared to see because of my position. There was no dramatic call to arms, no speeches about glory. Instead, something quieter and stranger happened. Human shipyards, the ones scattered across a dozen systems, simply began working faster, not in a panic, in a steady, practiced rhythm, like a machine that had been built for exactly this purpose, and was finally being switched on. Colony worlds that had spent decades focused on farming and construction began reorganizing their industry within days. It was not chaos. It was closer to a well-rehearsed drill, except nobody could remember rehearsing it. It was simply in us, somewhere old and deep, waiting for a reason. I asked my supervisor, a woman named Priya Okonkwo who had been with the Bureau since before first contact, why everyone seemed so calm. "Because we've done this before," she said. "Not against aliens, against ourselves, over and over, for most of our history, until we finally got tired of it. We hoped we would never have to remember how, but apparently, we still know how." "That's not comforting," I said. "It's not supposed to be comforting," she said. "It's supposed to be true." Meanwhile, the wider galaxy was watching. I started reading intercepted broadcasts from neutral observers, species who had nothing to do with the conflict but were suddenly very interested in it. A trade consortium called the Dravith Union sent a formal message to the Vashtar Compact, not offering help, but asking, in very polite language, if the Compact was certain about its decision. A message like that, between 2 powers that size, was almost an insult. It was the diplomatic version of raising an eyebrow. One old species, the Corvini, who almost never involved themselves in anyone else's business, sent a single short transmission to human command. I read the translated text myself. It said, "We remember Earth's 20th century. We are sorry for what is coming, and we do not mean sorry for you." I remember reading that message and feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. The Vashtar, for their part, seemed confused by the muted reactions. Public broadcasts from their command worlds showed officials confidently predicting a short, one-sided conflict. Their military analysts described human technology as adequate but unremarkable, our numbers as insufficient for sustained resistance, our will to fight as historically undocumented and therefore assumed weak. I actually laughed out loud when I read that last part, alone in my apartment, at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep. The first real engagement happened 11 days after the declaration, near the edge of Kessler's Reach. A Vashtar patrol fleet, 3 cruisers, moved in to secure the disputed system, expecting no resistance at all. What they found instead was a small human defense group, 4 ships, none of them as large as the Vashtar cruisers, waiting for them. I was not there. I only know what the official reports told me, and later, what I heard from a friend who served on one of those ships, a young engineer named Marcus who I had known since university. He told me later, over a drink back on Earth, that nobody on his ship expected to win in the traditional sense. Their orders were not to destroy the Vashtar fleet. Their orders were to hold, to signal, and to make the Vashtar commanders understand, clearly and without any doubt, that humanity intended to defend what was ours, no matter the cost, for as long as it took. The engagement lasted 6 hours. Human ships took damage. One was disabled and had to withdraw. But by the end of it, the Vashtar patrol had retreated without securing the system. stunned by a level of coordinated, stubborn resistance their intelligence reports had told them was impossible. That was when things started to change on the Vashtar side. I began seeing translated fragments of internal Vashtar communications, shared with our bureau by Allied observers. A senior fleet officer, in a report to compact leadership, wrote something that stuck with me. Translated roughly, it said, "Our intelligence on this species is decades old and appears to have significantly underestimated both their industrial capacity and their psychological resilience. Recommend immediate reassessment before further escalation." Another officer, in a separate report, referenced old, obscure historical texts about Earth that had apparently just been rediscovered by Vashtar researchers, records of wars fought across our own planet, conflicts that killed staggering numbers of people, and yet never once caused humanity to give up entirely. The officer's conclusion was short, and I imagine, deeply unwelcome to his superiors. This is not a young species. This is an old species that has simply been quiet for a while. 60 days into the conflict, Sen Calvor herself requested a meeting. I was called back to Conference Hall 3, the same room where it had all started. Ambassador Chen asked me to be there again, as translator, though by this point most of the Vashtar delegation had picked up enough English to barely need me. Sen looked different this time. Not defeated exactly, but careful. The cold certainty from our first meeting was gone. "We would like to discuss terms," she said. "For our surrender?" Ambassador Chen asked, though we both already knew the answer. "For a ceasefire," Sen corrected. "And a re-evaluation of the Kessler's Reach boundary." Chen folded her hands on the table, exactly the way she had on the day the war began. "We can discuss shared access to the system. That offer was on the table 60 days ago, before you declared war on us over it." Sen's long face did not show much emotion, but something in her posture had softened. "Our intelligence regarding your species was flawed." "I know," Chen said simply. "May I ask why you did not correct it? You could have shown us the truth from the beginning. It might have prevented this entire conflict." Chen considered the question for a moment, before answering, and I translated her words carefully, because I wanted to get them exactly right. "We did not hide our history because we were ashamed of it," she said. "We hid it because we hoped, for once, to be known for something else. We wanted the galaxy to know us as builders, and explorers, and neighbors first. We hoped no one would ever need to learn the other part." "And if we had not declared war, then you never would have," Chen said. "That was rather the point. The negotiations that followed took 3 more weeks, but they were nothing like the meeting that started this whole mess. Both sides spoke carefully, respectfully, and by the end, the Kessler's Reach system was split fairly between our two peoples, with a joint research station, built on the smallest of the 3 planets, as a quiet symbol of the agreement. It still operates there today, staffed by both human and Vashtar scientists, a strange little monument to a war that neither side particularly wanted to remember. I stayed in the bureau for another decade after that. I translated a lot of boring trade agreements. I liked it that way. But every now and then, when I meet someone from a species that has been part of galactic society far longer than we have, I notice the way they look at humans. Not with fear, exactly. Something quieter than that. A kind of careful respect, the sort you give something you once underestimated and never plan to underestimate again. I think about Sen Calvor sometimes, and that small red light blinking on her wrist, and how certain she looked pressing that button. I do not think she was foolish. I think she simply believed the file she had been given, the way most people believe the story they are told, until the world shows them something different. We never wanted anyone to learn the other part of our history the hard way. But I have come to understand something over the years, something my grandmother might have told me if I had thought to ask her sooner. Some lessons cannot be explained ahead of time. They can only be learned, carefully and reluctantly, by people who assumed they already knew the whole story. The galaxy learned ours 60 years too late, and I have a feeling that lesson is going to stick around for a very long time.